To have success with any level of real estate investing, you have to have three things. It's time, it's experience, and it's money.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in.
All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. I have a great guest with me here today, Clint Harris. Clint is a professional real estate investor, entrepreneur, and handles capital raising and investor relations at Nomad Capital. Clint, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. Great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And glad you're willing to serve us this afternoon with a little bit of your time. We appreciate that very much.
Sure thing.
Yeah, I'd love it if you wouldn't mind maybe give our listening audience a little bit more of a background on yourself, maybe how you got into real estate investing, what that journey has looked like, maybe any bumps along the way, et cetera.
Sure. So coming out of college, I had a 16-year career in medical sales, implanting pacemakers and defibrillators. So a lot of nights, weekends, working on call in heart surgery. That's kind of a young man's game and can kind of burn you out in the long run. So knowing that was something that typically people don't end up doing for decades and decades, at some point there has to be an off-ramp. And for me, the off-ramp that my wife and I chose was real estate. So we started investing in single-family homes using the BRRRR strategy. And then I took a promotion and we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina in 2017. And so took over the medical sales territory there. And it opened up the opportunity for us to live at the beach and to start looking at Airbnb properties. So 2018, we started buying small multifamily Airbnb properties, converting them to Airbnbs. They were, I guess, long-term tenants at the time. We would renovate them and convert them to short-term rentals. We still own 14 of those. Then that turned into partnering to build out a property management company. What I learned through that process is that even though it will give you a level of financial independence, because I replaced my income that way, still working, what it did not give me was time and location independence. It was a very, very active investment strategy. From there, I started a dedicated, aggressive pursuit towards the most passive investment strategies that I can find. And that led us to our journey into going from short-term rentals, stabilizing that portfolio through the company that we own, but specifically going into self-storage and then self-storage conversions and syndication.
Okay, great. Now I want to take a little bit of a step back here. You had talked about, your kind of transition from medical sales, into real estate investing. Many of the individuals that listen to this podcast are high performing sales professionals, or they're high performing W-2 earners, right? So my question kind of for you is this, and that is, why did you decide, what was kind of the genesis of that decision going from, medical sales into real estate versus just going from medical sales from one W-2 to another high W-2?
That's always an option. But the reality is, I think is one thing that I always try to fast forward where I want to be farther down the road, find somebody that's farther along in their journey that's achieved that, and then work backwards from there to see what I wanted. And when I looked down the road, the people that were doing medical sales or trading time for money for 20, 30 years, I didn't see the destination that I was looking for, specifically because I think the ability to save our way to retirement has been taken away from my generation. I think my grandparents could do that. My parents had the ability to save their way to retirement. People still can. If you're a high earning income individual, you're a white coat professional, you're a lawyer, attorney, IT, whatever it is, and you're making a lot of money, you technically could save your way to retirement as long as you're living below your means. A lot of people come out of med school or get these high paying jobs, start buying the cars, the house, and next thing you know, a lot of times they've taken away their own ability to save their way to retirement. And so your only options are to change your living standards, which most people don't do, or to aggressively outpace that with investments that are not It's not a saving strategy. Defense isn't going to get us there. It has to be more offense. And so when I looked at the people that were in medical sales for 25, 30 years, yes, there was a lot of people that had a lot of success in that industry. It's not going the same way as it used to be. A pacemaker used to last 5 years and cost 20 grand. Now they last 15 years and they cost 4 grand. The strategy is just not there. So I had to have a change, or else I was going to end up at a destination. I could work backwards and see where it was going to be, and it wasn't what I wanted. So I had to be put in a situation where, you can calculate the ceiling of what you're currently doing. And if what you're currently doing, you can look and see what that ceiling is. If that ceiling is not enough for what you want for yourself and for your family, then the only real risk is not doing something differently, right? So I could see what that ceiling was and what that looked like. It looked like me trading time for money to pay for other people's days off to get a lifestyle at retirement that probably was not what I wanted it to be, because Social Security is going away. There's no more pension. Inflation is degrading the value of the dollar faster than we can put it away. My job was to listen to what the market is telling me and to go into something where I'm working for myself to create not just a level of financial independence, but time and location independence. Otherwise, I'm trading away the best years of my life to pay for somebody else's days off and make them rich.
Clint, I love this. Okay. So my one word to you is amen. You mentioned a number of different things in what you just said. You talked about things like reverse engineering what your goals are. You talked about the inflation monster, lifestyle creep, not being able to really save your way to retirement, that sort of thing. I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast would totally resonate with what you just said. So the question then for the rest of us is, if we're going to get into real estate, we're either going to choose to do it actively or we're going to choose to do it passively, right? The truth is it's very difficult to go from a high income W-2 job into full board active real estate ownership, because we all only have so many hours in a day, right? I actually want to see my children play soccer on the weekends as opposed to swinging hammers and evicting tenants, right? I actually want to have an opportunity to date my wife once a week, right? Very difficult to do that if you're riding 2 horses at the same time, right? So what made you decide to get into actively owning real estate versus just being a limited partner, a passive investor in someone else's deal?
So I don't think that there's necessarily a right or wrong answer here. A lot of it comes down to who the person is. For me, I have an entrepreneurial spirit, and I've always had a passion for real estate. My first house that I bought when I was 24 was a duplex. I lived in one half, rented out the other half. Before I ever heard the term house hack, I thought I'd invented it and was a genius. Turns out I was far from it, still am. I got bit by the bug early on, and I started an aggressive pursuit of built up 9 single family homes. Very slow way to get ahead. Small multifamily, converting them to Airbnb, very active. Eventually toward, an aggressive pursuit towards passive investment strategies, which is where I am now. That having been said, I'm very happy I did that, because I bootstrapped a lot of deals, and a lot of what I'm doing now with big conversions with my partners is the same thing I was doing with small family homes, with flipping houses, and with BRRRR strategy and single family rentals. It's the same lessons, asset class conversion, cap rate, everything else. It's just got a few more zeros on it. So I'm grateful that I did that. Would I recommend it to anybody else? I can't answer that. I would be inclined to say that most of the time I would say no. But here's the important part. To have success with any level of real estate investing, you have to have 3 things. It's time, it's experience, and it's money. And it has to be some combination of those 3 things. You don't have to have all of them, but they have to be involved. So if you're a high earning income individual, you're a pulmonologist, cardiologist, interventionalist, whatever it may be, if you've got money, it's probably not a smart thing for you to take the limited amount of time that you have and go spend it to be an active investor. Because, if you have money, you probably don't have time. Without time, you can't get experience. If you can make the time to go get experience, that's great. But if your time is worth $300, $400 an hour with your main profession, what are you doing? Right? Like, just at that point in time, it's better to keep the main thing, and just be aware of you still have to have those 3 things to have success. It's time, it's experience, and money. Now, keep in mind, I'm an operator in syndication. So should you take my word on this? Maybe not. Shop around and make your own decision based upon the time and experience that you do have. Take your own inventory. But if you have money, Most of the time, with intelligent, successful, high earning income individuals, the right answer is to passively partner your capital with someone else's time and experience. You can go make a better return on your investment if you're an active investor, if you're good at it. If you know how to operate, you can go flip houses, you can go be a wholesaler, you can go do all the things, and you can have success with that. And you're probably going to make 30, 35%. You're going to make more than the 18 to 20% you're going to make with a syndicator, but you're going to be sacrificing time. So now you have to look at what's my time worth, not just with my job, but also with my family. If you're a high earning income individual and you make more than even as $150,000 to $200,000, if you're making over $250,000, which a lot of people are, honestly, unfortunately, that's kind of the baseline to be able to live comfortably. It's probably close to 250 now. If you're making over that and you don't have a background in construction or in real estate, your answer is probably to live below your means, take your capital, let that money get up and go to work even when you don't feel like it, and put it on a path. How aggressive you need to be with your investment strategy depends on your timeline and what your financial goal is for yourself. So you need to come up with that first and walk it backwards. But the answer for your listener base is probably that you need to put that money to work with someone else's time and experience. And together, the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense. I think of the word, when you were speaking there, the word leverage, right? You're really leveraging somebody else's time, somebody else's experience, and somebody else's money, which were the three, things that you had mentioned there. So I'd like to now maybe pivot a little bit more, Clint, and talk a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey. You've really kind of found a niche, from what I understand. How did you identify and seize the opportunity in self-storage, particularly through the conversion of big box retail buildings?
Well, the first way that I found self-storage is that I had 14 Airbnb units plus a property management company, and I got burned out on tenants, right? If you have a long-term property, you got one tenant. If you got an Airbnb, you have 8 to 10 tenants every month, and it's constant. And so I was to the point where I said, okay, I reached a level of financial independence. What it did not give me is time and location independence. So how do I start over, rebuild a portfolio with the end in mind? And so I found a group of about 8 older investors, seasoned people that I really looked up to that had the lifestyle that I was looking for. They're the ones that could spend the time with the family. They could go fishing. They could do the travel. They could do all the things. And when I polled those audiences to find out what they were doing, it came down to 3 things. For the most part, it was mobile home parks, and I was already burned on tenants. I had no interest in that. It was hard money lending. I didn't have the 7 figures it took to get started in a meaningful way there. And it was self-storage. And I was like, okay, self-storage, you're literally renting someone a box of air. There's no kitchen, there's no bathrooms. I think I could get into this. So I started the pursuit of self-storage. I've always been big on networking in my local community, the local real estate meetups. I host one, I go to 2 or 3 others. And so I met my partners there, and we got to know each other over a period of about a year and a half. I helped them with some smaller projects and some hotels and some short-term rentals. They helped me with some things. We built a relationship, and then they let me know that they were going to get back into storage, and they invited me in because of my background in cardiology. All of my friends were physicians that had plenty of money, no time, always looking for a way to invest to get out of that white coat lifestyle. So I brought the capital, they brought the time and experience. But the reason I got involved with them was self-storage conversions, and I'll jump in that momentarily, but the reason I did is because it was what I was already doing. I was buying nasty quadplexes at the beach with bad long-term tenants that chain smoked in the property. I was moving the month-to-month tenants out, doing a total renovation, converting it to a short-term rental property, and all of a sudden it would 4x the rents and a massive appreciation. I changed the asset class. It changes the formula by which the asset is valued. The value shoots up through the roof, and you could recapitalize through a refinance or a HELOC or anything else like that. So when my partners approached me with this strategy, it just clicked for me because it was the same thing I was already doing. So in 2020, we partnered together and we bought a Kmart building. It was 87,000 square feet. We bought the building for $1.5 million in Reidsville, North Carolina. The replacement cost on the brick and mortar shell was $6.5 million. So we're bought at way below replacement cost, about $1 million below the appraised value, because nobody wants an 87,000 square foot Kmart. But if you think about where it is, that entire community used to drive to that building to buy their home goods, right? And they don't do that anymore because of Amazon and Walmart, but the residential density is there. The vehicle traffic count is there. The visibility is there. And even though they don't drive back for their home goods, it makes it a great location for those same people to drive back to the same building and pay us to put the same stuff right back inside of it. So we bought it for 1.5. We did a $2.5 million renovation. When it was converted, the empty building appraised for $9 million. As a stabilized self-storage unit with 650 units inside, the value is significantly higher than that. So it's a classic asset class conversion, the same thing I was doing before. It's just a lot more units, a lot more stable, a lot easier to manage, a lot faster forced depreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the opportunity look like out there across this country with some of these big box retail locations that either are currently on the market or maybe becoming on the market, at some point here in the future?
There's good opportunity. The interesting thing is that it's kind of a micro economy. Within storage, what matters is about a 7-mile radius. That's about as far as people want to drive. So in terms of location, there are plenty of them out there. You want to make sure it's an area that has massive population growth, that's underserved for storage, and that you can get the building for the right price. I'll be honest with you, I'm not that worried about sharing our secret sauce because it's very hard to do. The only reason it works for us at Nomad Capital, we have an acquisition team calling on 50 to 70 properties a week. I raise the capital in-house. We have a construction team that builds everything out at cost plus 12%. And then we have in-house property management that manages at 5%. You have to have all those top to bottom vertical integration pieces in place to make it worth it. Otherwise, if you're paying retail costs for the building, the construction, the private money, and the management, it can eat you alive. You really have to have that top to bottom vertical integration. If you have that, let's say you and I, Jeremy, wanted to go build a self-storage from the ground up right now. It's going to cost us $110 to $120 a square foot for the construction, plus the cost of the land. So in the last 2 years, we've done 2 Kmarts, a grocery store, 3 warehouses, 2 textile mills, and a Sundrop bottling facility. Across that portfolio of conversions, on the day that we open up the doors as a completed climate-controlled self-storage, for the cost of the building, the construction, the land, the parking lot, all of it, our average is $65 a square foot. So that's about half the cost of construction, which means when we fill it up, on average, we're sitting at or a little above 35% loan to value, which means we don't have to liquidate the asset for everybody to get a payday. If you buy a house, you fix it up, you make it a little bit nicer, you have to sell it and you get a payday and you pay taxes on that, and that's great. But now you just sold it, you traded time for money, and you're done. And the day that you stop working flipping houses is the day that you stop getting paid. Our model is buy well below replacement cost, do the full renovation. We land at 35% loan to value. We will refi the stabilized asset at 55, maybe 60% loan to value. We don't want to stress the asset. That's more than enough money for us to double all of our investors' capital. When we pay out our investors by way of a refinance, that's not a capital gain because we didn't sell anything. So they're doubling their money tax-free. From there, everybody stays in the deal. We continue to hold it long-term. Everybody continues to get quarterly cash distributions, and it's an unlimited return. We started syndication. My partner started in self-storage in 2006. As syndication, we started in 2021. We just hit $150 million worth of assets under management. We've got a 5-year plan to get to $500 million and a 10-year plan to $1 billion. At $150 million, we have never sold anything right now. Deal flow is not a problem. We're focusing on building out our construction and project management department and trying to do 10 to 12 projects a year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, most of our listening audience is familiar with syndication investing through multifamily,
Right.
Your typical value add, right? I know you talked about self-storage being really essentially investing in boxes of air, right? So
Yeah.
outside of that, what would be kind of some of the main differences that investors should know and understand about investing in self-storage versus other types of syndications? And why might a diversified portfolio, make the most sense?
One thing that's really important is that the expense ratio is basically the inverse of multifamily. Like with multifamily, this is going to be a little bit of an oversimplification, but on multifamily, the expenses of the gross potential rental income coming in 65 to 70% on average is expenses. That's office staff, landscaping, maintenance, CapEx, security, everything else. The other 30% is the net operating income. With storage, it's the inverse. It's about 30% expenses. That's for the lights and the air conditioning and the heat, and then maybe one office staff, although a lot of times you'll have one person that can remotely manage multiple facilities. And 70% is the net operating income. And then over time, that's at 30%, that's when you're opening a facility, you're giving away some promotions, $1 for the first month, half off for the first 2 months, advertising. As you stabilize, those advertising dollars go down. You stop giving the promotions. You start increasing the rents on a month-to-month basis, by the way, not every 1 to 2 years like you do with multifamily. So it's incredibly inflation resistant. That expense ratio will drop to the low to mid 20%. And from there, it only gets better over time. The facility that my partners owned the longest since 2006 operates at a 18% expense ratio. So it's a really, really good asset to hold for a long period of time. So it gives you the opportunity to look for a partner that has a really low cost basis where you can do that. So I think that's important for anybody out there that is investing across the board. Always diversify. Different asset, different geography, different operator. There's 2 other things you should be thinking about right now. It has been an absolute bloodbath, especially in the multifamily syndication space over the last 2 years. You should also be diversifying across time with different deals paying out at different times. And more importantly, diversified across debt structure. I talked to an investor recently who had invested into 7 different deals, different operators, different assets, a winery, multifamily, a few different things, an RV park. But at the end of the day, they all use the same bridge debt and variable rate debt structure. So when rates shot up faster than they ever have, the entire portfolio was exposed. All of them stopped giving distributions. One had a capital call. One ended up going down as a total loss. So I would highly encourage everyone, especially right now, different asset, different geography, different operator, different time, and different debt structure. And we have never used variable rate debt. We always use fixed rate debt, or else we pay cash for the building, because nobody wants a 100,000 square foot Kmart. It's been sitting empty for 12 years, right? The town's just ready for somebody to do something. So that's what I would say. I would say I don't care if you do it with us. If you're going to invest in storage right now, it is way different than it was 20 years ago. It used to be the baby boomers putting Christmas decorations and bulky furniture in there. Now it's millennials that now make up 34% of the population using 38% of storage. They're not buying houses. They don't have the attic, the garage, or the basement. They're renting. When you rent based upon the square footage that you're getting. So they would rather rent a 1-bedroom condo for $1,300 a month and get a $150 storage unit instead of a 2-bedroom condo for $1,800 a month. They still have important things. It's mountain bikes, it's wakeboards, it's skis, it's fly rods, it's waders, it's kayaks, and it's winter clothes. They're using that space as an extension of the closet or garage. So think about storage if you're going to, making sure it's got a good residential density and a feasibility study. And more importantly, right now, if you're investing in storage, make sure that it is safe, secure, well lit, easy access, and it has to be climate controlled.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing all of that with our listening audience, Clint. My next kind of question is, really what's next? What's next for Nomad Capital? And I think your property management company's name is Going Coastal Property Management. What's really the next step for those 2 companies as we kind of look to, move into the back half of 2024 and into beyond?
So yeah, Going Coastal is my personal property management company that manages my 14 Airbnb listings plus another 80 listings on our island. What I've learned is, it took me 2 years to build that company, and then I completely hired myself out. What I've learned is that was supposed to be completely passive. It's residual. It's not passive. I just front loaded the work on that. But I don't love my name being tied to something that I'm not heavily involved in. So at some point, I'm starting to look at, it's a great return on investment, but I'm looking at my return on equity as to what the company's now worth and what my Airbnb properties are worth. So for me, there's going to be a transition over the next few years of exiting from those short-term rentals and going all in on syndication and passive investments, because as I get older, my time is worth more than anything else to me. I've got a 4-year-old son and a 1-year-old, and plan on doing a lot more traveling with them and with my wife. For Nomad, We specifically built out to the point that we can continue to have growth. Deal flow is not a problem. There used to be close to 2,000 Kmarts across the country. They're all closed down now. We've all seen these small towns, secondary and tertiary markets with the closed down grocery store that's been there for years. We've got buildings and businesses going out of business left and right. The only thing that really matters with storage is about a 7-mile radius. So I don't care if a new competitor came in 15 miles away. People aren't driving to the other side of town to get $5 off per month on a storage unit. That's just not the way that it works. So we feel like we're dialed in. Deal flow is not a problem. My job is to raise the capital, and we're actively working on that constraint right now. We've got a 5-year plan to get to 500 million and a 10-year plan of $1 billion. We have a pathway forward. I'm sure that we will sell some things along the way to get there, but our pathway forward is that we don't have to liquidate assets to give our investors a tax-free payday. So our goal, the reason it's called Nomad Capital, a nomad is somebody that goes where they want, when they want, and does what they want. The idea was sparked by my partner, Eric, spent 3.5 years on a sailboat with his wife and 5 kids when the market crashed in 2008 and nobody was doing commercial construction. They sailed across the Mediterranean for 3.5 years because they had built their first self-storage in 2006. That sparked the idea of, if we get a tribe of people together, we combine capital with our time and experience, we can do projects larger than what anyone could likely do on their own. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And our goal is to have $1 billion in assets under management and raise a tribe of real estate nomads.
Clint, this has been remarkable. I really appreciate you being a guest on today's episode.
Sure thing. Happy to be here.
What would be maybe 1 or 2 different ways that our listening audience can learn more about you and engage with you further?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Clint Harris, Nomad Capital. You can email me directly. I talk to investors all day, every day, and I love it. I'm a big extrovert, and I'm very passionate about what we're doing and learning in general about real estate. It's clint@nomadcapital.us, or you can go straight to our website, nomadcapital.us, book a call there, or connect with us.
That's great. Well, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes for today's episode. Again, really appreciate you joining us today on the episode, Clint. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.